Okay, so let's have a warm welcome now that we're live for our Zoom audience anyway. And I'll have you just raise your hand. Emma Rantucci, Clelia Bertolami, Romi Marcanio, and Rino Fabris. World War II ended 77 years ago, so our speakers are pretty young at the time that war was on. So what we're going to hear are memories of their childhood and their family stories as well, and how they were affected by those events. And all of our guests were from small rural towns, and so their experiences are very different from those growing up in large cities. In fact, everybody's story is really different because it really depends on the region of Italy, the size of the town, where the enemy was invading, where they bombed, who was commanding those armies. So everybody's got a very different story to tell. And they were really difficult times, and a lot of people never talked about it after the war. They were so painful. They did not want to talk about it, and it's totally understandable. But thank you for coming tonight, Emma, Clelia, Romi, and Rino, and thank you for sharing your memories. And as I mentioned earlier, if there are subjects that you wish to skip over and not discuss details, that is fair, and we respect that. Okay. So Emma, let's start with you. I warned her I'd start with you.
No, and I can't look at him. I have to look at that.
That's right. Yeah, that's not cold. All right, so tell us about your home life. You know, where you grew up. We got a little bit of a preview in the slide, and you know, family, home life, village, things like that.
Well, thank you. I was in 1938, so what I know about the war, I was very young, but I certainly remember, and I can vouch pretty well with what Linda and I'm trying to think of her name now, and Lelia wrote, because it's exactly what we went through. Life through the war was probably the same in most places. The only thing that they lost two sons, or she lost two sons, and we didn't lose anyone in the immediate family. But I grew up in a family that was very caring, very supportive. I wasn't too concerned because I didn't understand all that the war brought on us. But we lived in a large home with my Nonna and Nonna, my mom and dad, my sister Renata, that was 6 years older than I, and then my dad had to hire a farmhand, Delvo, who became part of our family, because not having boys and having a large acreage needed help. And we had about 50 acres, I believe, a big, his chestnut grove, grew everything else. We didn't buy anything. The only, well, there was only a few things that I recall. That was oranges, salt, and sugar, and so on. And during the war, my mom actually traveled about 5 kilometers, left early in the morning at 4 o'clock, had to get back before the whatever it was that they put on at 8 o'clock after the curfew. That's it. And so she would go up with a big load of flour. A lot of times just carried it on her head and then came back with those things. There was an exchange. Later on, when you couldn't get the oil and so on, my dad had a lot of walnut trees. So he made a press and would just press them in order to get a little few drops of oil. But anyway, going back to me. Wait, am I getting too long?
That's okay. We're gonna talk about maybe Romi's
Okay,
as well.
sure.
And,
Okay, we'll do that. That's about it.
No, we're gonna skip over Clelia for just a moment. Okay, that's okay. And Romi, do you mind sharing the microphone? That would be great. Can you turn that on? Perfect. So Romy, how about your home? Now, you were born during the war. So maybe you can tell us sort of your first memories of your home and acreage and who lived there.
We lived across from our grandparents. And it was a big house where my dad had, and it's another one. This on? Yeah, it's on. Okay, so what happened? My grandfather had a house, and next door to him was his brother. So the brothers stayed on one side, and my grandfather's family stayed on the other side. So we had a lot of family. As all the parents and cousins. So we grew up there. And I was very young, when the war came through there, I was 5 years old. What I remember by the war, it was the scare, all the noise about the truck and the equipments they came in with the soldiers, they just came. There was so much noise. We went outside and we saw these soldiers. We didn't understand them, but they took over our house. They took over all the property. They parked all the trucks and everything there. And so they took over inside the house. And so we were by ourselves. And my mom, I remember she said to me, you go to your grandmother. And I went to my grandmother and I stayed there for a while, but I want to see what was going on. But, that was, the start of the soldiers were there. But we had a family stay with us. They were 5 members of family. They had a husband, wife, and 3 girls. Because their town was completely destroyed, and they came and stayed over our place. So we fed them. They were like a family. We didn't know them, but they came and asked for food, and they could do some job, and we could feed them. So my dad, my mom said, just stay here. So we had a lot of room on our place. So I was happy to see these people because, war, you don't see many people around. Everybody's scared. And that was it. And,
Okay. All right, so thank you, Romy. And I'll get you to pass the microphone to Rino.
Sorry.
And Rino, maybe you can tell us about your home, typically your home, because it was not a farming home. And who lived in that area with you?
Okay, well, first I give you an idea where my little town was about 2,000 people, and more farming, and we have a couple of acres too, matter of fact. And the situation is pretty. I used to, when Mussolini was in power, he built a freeway. Well, that time they call it freeway. They built a road from Milan to Trieste. Trieste was a big port where I live. It's about 100 kilometers where I live. And it's the main railroad and the main highway got from Trieste to Milan. So it was quite something, because see, now they got 20 highways. But at that time, in I remember, I was only 8 years old. What I remember is most what the people told me, I know it was quite busy highway, a busy railroad. But in fact, I always remember the trains full of Jews come from Trieste and all the East countries there. It was the railroad to Poland. It was the only way that way was only one railroad. It was right through my town. And the food, you see the trains now, they are 50 back. Well, was not 50, but was 30, and like cattle, inside the Jews. And they used to stop in there because they're quite sexual connections with different railroads, because it was quite important, the station. and they stopped 5 minutes to break. I remember the whole family, whenever they got a hake or a piece of bread, they rushed to the train and give it to them because they got nothing. They were like sardines inside. That's I see the trains. I didn't see the people, but my mother and somebody else, they see what's going on, and they explained to me, but I was a kid who cared. So, it was quite something. And now to remember that, I see the films now, it's exactly the same, like animal,
It's been very emotional.
was quite something. I was not emotional because I didn't know nothing about it. See, we didn't know, and Hitler was killing the Jews. Nobody knew,
So with your family lived all together though, and like you had a common courtyard and.
Oh, yeah, there is a little village, and it's about a kilometer and a half from the main station.
Yeah.
The railroad, and we're quite safe because we go so far away. And
So what was your first memory of the war? Did you remember a specific time when the war had begun or Italy started to participate in the war in 1940?
yeah, what I remember is what I hear from the adult people, and what they did and what we see, because Italy, they didn't want to fight anyway, and then Mussolini joined Hitler, so that's put Italy upside down. And really, I don't know much really because we have to, and nobody talk about, so.
Okay, thank you. So Emma, do you have a first memory of the war starting? You were very young at the time, but what's your first memory? Not necessarily of the war starting, but when your first memory of the war.
Well, I was about 6 years old, so I only could see certain things. I didn't think that it would actually affect me, but I could see the family, what they were trying to go through already. And I think I felt safe because of the home environment that I had. Just to see the people around, and then of course the German army, 3 soldiers came to live in our house. I don't know why they chose that, but we were right on the main highway out of Italy to the north, and we had a good driveway up so they could bring their horses or anything else. So anyway, that is part of it, I think. And then, we lost so much, and we'll probably go on to that, right? Yeah.
Thanks. Now, clearly, your story is a little different or a lot different. So when war broke out in 1939, you were in England. Yeah. So maybe you can tell us about that, how you ended up in England and what you experienced, and eventually you did get back to Italy. Maybe you can tell us about that. Thank you.
Who's this?
It's on already.
No, it's not. Oh, yes, it is. I was born in 1926. I was born in 1926, so I imagine I'm the oldest one here. I'm going to read you my mother's diary. Oh, sorry. I'm going to read you my mother's diary, which was in Italian, and I have translated it into English. In 1940, excuse me, when Mussolini, then the head of the government, of the Italian government, declared war on England, I found myself, and this is my mother talking, I found myself in London with my husband Fausto and my only daughter Clelia. We lived on Baton Green Road, where we operated a small cafe restaurant. Our customers were mostly Italians, but the English clients seemed to enjoy our traditional Italian food. A few days after the declaration of war, my husband was deported and placed in a concentration camp on the Isle of Man.
with other Italians and foreigners. My daughter and I stayed in London, which had now become like a tomb because of the blackouts of the city deprived us to move around freely, especially in the evening and night. The windows were covered with black candlelight, and the rationing of food imposed on us incredibly restrictions. My daughter was just terrified day or night. Often at the sound of siren, in a matter of a few minutes, we had to provide ourselves with gas masks and take refuge in the tomb shelters, where sometimes, instead of saving lives, gas and water exploded, caused death, and people were buried alive. I could go on again, but this was in London.
So that was in London. Now, you ended up back in Italy though, during the war. So how did that happen?
Yes, well, from London. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Emma. She's bossy.
I said, they can say things and it's still family.
And she tells everybody what to do. I decided to apply to the Italian embassy for protection and help. In a few days, I received a telegram with orders to leave in a few hours and reach a ship on which we were to meet the diplomatic staff, who would give the necessary instructions. We arrived at night, it's dark, and in a few hours we reached what we believe was a ship. But to our surprise and delusion, it was a barge, dark and gloomy, guarded by soldiers in war gear, with bayonets and ready to intervene drastically in any situation. We were not permitted to speak or give each other signals. The soldiers were observing our every movement. More?
Yeah, how did they know that?
We were 700 Italians, nearly all women and children. The absence of Italian embassies rendered us very anxious and distressed. But the next morning, with God's grace, from the sea of Scotland, we were transported to our ship, the Bermuda, where we were met by the Italian embassy, and we were helped and treated, and the ship was comfortable and spacious, but the sea was full of mines and treacherously dangerous. Often an alarm would sound to practice how to proceed in case of emergency, and we were assigned to longboat number 10. But my daughter and I would hug and remain in our cabin ready to die, rather than face the horrid and threatening water. The sea crossing took 19 days. We arrived first in Spain, where we stopped approximately 7 hours. We were transported in perfect silence and as quickly as possible from the Bermuda to Corte d'Orso, an Italian ship. We sailed the Sicilian coast and by ferry to Messina and then Napoli. From here, we took the train to Civitavecchia, where we experienced the first air raid in Italian soil. Being anxious and the lack of provisions for the future prevented us to appreciate the joy of having set foot in our native land, which has always inspired in us pride, respect, and enthusiasm. We had left behind all our possessions. We had nothing except the life which, for some reason, God had allowed us to continue. After Civitavecchia, that's a city south of Port, actually, south of Italy. After Civitavecchia, we left for Castelnuovo and Portico. That's where we came from. Our village in a beautiful area called Garfagnano. We finally were reunited with my parents, brothers and sisters, relatives and friends came to welcome us back home. What a sense of joy and peace we felt, and how mistaken we were thinking that nothing could disturb our peaceful village. Soon our small village was bombed and many buildings scattered. Food was scarce, very scarce, but we managed to survive, especially with the help of my brother Pietro and his wife Estelina. This is my mother again talking, and it was Emma's dad and mother who really, really helped her. And I will always be grateful. That's it, I think. But let's see what more.
What we make it around. Yeah, so that was very interesting. So civilians who were in the wrong country at the wrong time went through a little bit of hardship as well, getting repatriated.
And the irony of all this, my father was immigrated to England because he hated the fascist party, and he was taken prisoner for 7 years.
Right, on to a lighter topic. So how about having some fun around your town? You know, you had I'm sure you had lots of friends during the war, didn't you? Not really. How about Reno? How about yourself? I think everything was really restricted at that time. You couldn't move around. Maybe tell us.
Well, what I remember, we only have a couple of kids in well, maybe a few in the village there, and in the Cortile, they call it. Corral, we have a few families, and was a few kids around, and play around, and I remember one time with the Germans, they was looking for a guy did a killing, and they go house to house and check. So they come in the yard from the road, and they come to the yard. It's a portico, and it's a corral, and it's like a guy with a machine gun sitting and facing everybody, all the houses. And I remember I was, kid. I used to play, but I have a little can with a string, and I used to go around. But the guy with machine gun, he was following me all the time. And well, I didn't pay attention, much. Meantime, the other Germans, they was checking the house and see if they can find it. But anyway, he ended up. They not to, I don't know if they find the guy or not, but then in the plaza outside my corral, outside the Cortile, they line up about 7 people, and because they didn't find the guy, and they was gonna kill them, because if you guys bring the guy in, we save the 7 people, and that's local people. And anyway, what happened, not really the story that my mother told me. Somehow they didn't find it, and they abolished everything. They canceled the killing. Anyway, they got away. That's one of the worst things I remember. I never forgot this machine gun fall, But anyway, that's not bad.
Yeah, war is horrible times, absolutely.
It's
And the children are affected so much by these events.
Another story can happen in the same courtyard, I was playing like a regular with the kids and everything else. And I can remember there was the German fighter or the American fighter. We have some kind of refugio to get in case the bombs coming, you know, and the alarm go off. Then when the alarm go off, you run to the tunnel and wait until it's over. And sometimes not happy, but you have to run and make sure you're safe. But anyway, this time I ran from the house through the cortile to the tunnel, and the fighter coming in, and he shoot, you know, with the machine gun when they got in the plane, and they shoot. And my uncle was running too in the same place because we have it together, everybody, all the families. We make we all together make this tunnel to get for safety in case. So everybody was using. So my uncle was too running in the same time. I was going in one side, he was going the other side. And he said, Jesus, something wrong with Rino, because I went down, you know, to get to the tunnel. I think I'm going to be. Well, anyway, the plane coming down and shoot, and I make it to the tunnel, my uncle too. And then when everything's over, the alarm go off, and we come out and we talk about, and so I look around and I find 3 boards against the refugee with a shot, with the bullets. I didn't find the bullets, I was looking for the bullets. But it was about 3 feet of me, you know. Something I think about now. I don't bother me, but more the machine gun bother me. Anyway, that's very, very bad situation.
Yeah, thank you for that story.
Yeah. But I'm not sure who was the fighter, was the Americans or the Germans. I never understood that. Yeah. Anyway, they coming down and they go pretty low and they shoot like crazy.
So Emma, you had a different experience. You had you didn't have so many friends around, but they put you to work. Yeah, everybody on the farm
Well, we
had to work.
At 6 years old, I did whatever a 6-year-old would do. So, you know, I shelled me and rode the pigs, she says. I did that too. That's a little bit of a brat. My dad wanted a boy, but he had 2 girls. And so I was, you know, the tomboy. Anyway, I can tell lots of stories about during the war. Did I do that? Okay. Well, he referred to a shelter. And so I remember this very well, as the war kind of came in our area. My dad and Delfo, our farmhand, engineered a underground tunnel that actually became the shelter. But oh my gosh, they framed it, they dug it all out by hand. But with my dad's ideas, it had to be a zigzag so that if a bomb was thrown on the one end, we could escape from the other end. And he planted young elm trees at both entries, plus the chimney. We had a little chimney with a small smoke. We couldn't have a lot of smoke anyway, so that, you know, they wouldn't be able, and we had just enough things from the house to be able to carry on. My sister and I feel as I said, 6 years old. Anyway, my sister and I stayed there all day. Our parents came at night and we cooked dinner and whatever. Some of the other things, because the Delfo had some kind of a ticket where he could travel around and not be caught. But so he sort of stayed with Grandma and Nona at the house. But you know, we had 5 cows, 2 pigs, chickens, and everything else. In the war, only 1 cow was left. And we had 3 German soldiers living in our house. They took the best bedroom that was added on. It was Mom and Dad's, but anyway, then they slept. But to go to that bedroom, you had to go through our bedroom that my sister and I slept in. And mom and dad then slept with us as well. They weren't too bad, but you know, many requests. And one day they came to my grandma who wore long black skirts like they all did in those days. And one night they came down and asked for eggs. Well, we've made them understand, well, we don't have any eggs because you stole the chickens 2 days ago. Well, they denied it, of course. But Norna kept replying, we don't have any eggs. We don't have any. So they said, oh, no, you do. So anyway, in order to scare her, they put a hand grenade in her pocket. Well, she was hilarious. I mean, she was so scared. So I ran up in the field and got my dad to come down because so he reprimanded them, of course, and then went to the headquarters and had the mean one taken out of our house. And when they took all the stock that we had, he reported again to the commander, whatever, across the river there. And they did give some money back, very little, but he couldn't even go get it because he would never get back. So my mother went, and coming back with a little bit of money, she was afraid to go through our town of Ponte Cossi because they would rob her, you know. So she took the soul out of her through and put a little bit of money under the soul to get home. I mean, those are some of the things that, you know, just happen all along. I don't remember many other things, but it's okay.
That's
I'll come back.
good, thank you. Yeah, Clelia, you had a special friend during that time period, didn't you?
Pardon me?
Didn't you have a special friend, like your fiance? Did
Oh,
you?
yes.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit. You don't have to tell us the whole story, but just a little.
Thank you. Well, what would you like to know?
So you met him.
Yes, I met him through his cousin, who was in the same boarding school as I was. And from there on, we saw each other. Then we finally got married after 7 years. That was it.
How
But
old
you
were
were-
you when you met?
Pardon me?
How old were you when you met him?
14, and my mother pulled my pigtails quite often. Yes.
So that part of the 7 years, you had to get out of jail these days.
It was very nice. It was very nice.
Yes. Well, you'd love to. How many years were you married?
28. When things were going smoothly, he passed on. Life, isn't it?
But you retreated with him up into the hills at some point, I believe.
Pardon me?
You retreated into the hillside.
Oh, do you mean we?
Yeah.
Yes, we did. You remember, Emma?
Well, you're,
Yeah.
tell the story.
Yes,
Emma's gonna tell Clelia's story.
yes, we took refuge in the,
No.
we took refuge in the caves and different areas and we met as often as we could, my fiance and I, but not very often because we were chaperones.
Hear that, everybody?
But
Just
then-
waiting for the days of the chaperone to come back.
It's on, turn it on. Is that on? We're on.
Hello?
Oh. But then you should remember that you moved up to Massa where he lived, where they had an apartment, and you and your mom moved up there.
Yes,
And I didn't join, but anyway.
Yes, we moved there, a small village up in the Alps, and we stayed there how many months, I don't recall, but Emma came with us, and she was a rascal.
But you continue on, what happened with the plane that came down and your mother sent them a letter because she could write English, remember?
No,
To the soldier that came down with the plane, and you got your mom got the certificate.
oh, yes, those were soldiers that had English soldiers that had well,
We'll get to that,
Rain
maybe,
headline.
maybe we'll get to that a little bit later, if that's okay.
Okay, that's yeah.
Although what was going on? You were a troublemaker, were you, Emma? Okay, that's,
I told you my dad wanted a boy and I was a girl, so I had to do everything girls at that age would do and boys would do at that age. So, but anyway, yeah, I was a little bit of a rascal. I climbed every tree on our property, whatever.
I would have been your friend.
all right, so food became an issue for many people living in the cities. Rural areas, agricultural areas may not have been so bad, although the Germans, I'm sure, took a lot of the food. But maybe you could tell us what the food situation was like in your area. Romi, how about yourself with food?
About the food, we had a lot of food because we had a, farm and we had a chicken, the animals, milk because we had cows. So what happened, we were not short with food, but the only thing, people that were starving, all around, and we share with other people. Because that was the only way my dad thought it was, right to do it. And the German, when they came, they took a lot of food too. And I remember one soldier put a gun behind my mom's back and said, they want the pig, and my mom didn't say anything. They pushed her, so mom said, okay, go ahead and go have the pig. They took the pig and we didn't have a pig. So we stayed home for a while, but until the planes started coming, and because the soldiers were all around our house, they could see the equipment, they saw the soldiers, they were bombing our places. So my dad said, this is the time we have to leave, we have to go. So I remember it wasn't a night, planes were coming down and just shooting all over the place. My dad, and he picked me up, and my mom and all the, those people, and we were walking inside this creek. It was like no huge river, but it was a creek. And I remember to walk there because, the trees on both sides, they will shelter us from the plane. So, and we walked there, and I remember my dad walking, and there were a lot of low spot in the water, was deeper someplace, and I could feel the water in my feet, and I was scared, but I didn't say a word because we were trained to don't say a word. So, and we ended up in a cave for quite a few days there. I don't know how many days, but I didn't like it there. It was the smell, and there were a lot of people there. It was moldy and dark, and it was, but we had to stay there for a while. And so that was it. But before that, they had the shelter, like Emma said. They had the shelter, and I remember when the plane was coming, my mom would grab my brother, was 11 months younger, and would grab my hand and ran. And I used to hate because she ran so fast. And we ran to this shelter, and I was sliding down, and was inside there was all, was dirt. It was mucky and it was dark. And I was so scared to be there, but I would just cry, and I wouldn't say nothing. Nobody would say a word, even the kids were all quiet. And that was a life, we had to do it the best we could. And it's very hard. But I remember those family would stay with us. They appreciated so much because they didn't have nothing. Their house was completely destroyed. And the day the war ended, like the bells were ringing, all the church were ringing. And I remember my mom crying and this lady hugging each other and crying. I said, why you crying? The war was ended. Why you crying? They were so happy they were crying. So emotional. Yeah, it was really hard. And I remember those people, they went back to their home. And after a few years, they came back and they walked, I don't know how many days to come see us. And they said, my daughter's getting married. You have to come to the wedding. They were like family. It was very, very emotional time. But, the soldiers, they were all over the house. We couldn't, like my dad said, we cannot stay here because the plane were coming and all the equipment, they could see it. So that's why, we decided to go and stay in the mountain for quite a few days.
Go ahead,
I
Clelia.
want to say something about food. In Tuscany, where we live, they had all chestnut groves. And the chestnuts were a blessing because they were picked, peeled in a very special way in huts. And they were made into flour. And the flour we made what we call castagnaccio, we made frittelle, malafregoli, all those kind of things that were really nutritious and very healthy. So we did have that. Yeah. Excuse me.
And Romy, you had wheat, right?
Yes,
And
we-
tell us about what your father had to do.
Well, we have to be to the mill, but you had to go during the night because it was, somebody, the government didn't allow us to have all that wheat if we were hiding. So because they would take away from us, so they will go during the night, and the mill used to say, okay, I'll do for you, but he was scared too. And during the night, they will bring home all this flour, and then he will share with the neighbors. So, it was a really, it was hard. And I remember after, he was sleeping in our house with the gun and beside the bed, because people that were coming and steal stuff. And he wanted to scare them. But, it was a really tough time. Yeah, but people did the best they could. Like we say, we were lucky, we didn't lose any member of our family. My dad, he was a soldier, but he did a work in a trade from Rome to Pescara. And he would come home and sleep in our house because he had 2 small children. It allowed him to have the privilege to do that.
Oh.
Yeah, it was it was hard.
So Reno, you had some chickens around your courtyard, but you didn't have a farm. Tell us about your food situation.
In the yard, there was a few families. And everybody got a few chickens because it's easy to run. So what they did to recognize the chicken, because so many families and so many chickens. So to recognize them, what they did, they locked the chickens, let's say 20, whatever you got, each cage. And to identify them, they put a string in the window, in the wing. So different string, different color, so they recognize. When you got the chickens with the string and the color, and you put in the cage, and you keep it there tight for 2 days, they will next day you let it out, they will go back in the same cage. So that's what they did. So it was 7 cages there, seven families with 7 kind of chickens. But anyway, it's so funny. And the daytime, they check who got the eggs and things like that. They go in their own cage. But when the night coming, they try to get their own cage. But some they get confused. So you have to go and check for your chicken in a different cage. And so you take the chicken, the thing home, and you got somebody else chicken, you take it out. Anyway, it was quite something. So we only have an egg and things like that to eat and everything else. It was quite something, because if you got a couple of eggs and then you go in the store and you got too many eggs, so what you do, you get a couple of eggs and you go to the store and you buy something because it was very demanding for eggs. So they give you the eggs and they give you something else. Things like that. They say, so right. I'm surprised at my mother, with the food we have. I see, oh, we have something to eat. I never understood that. Every supper, breakfast, forget it. Forget it, because of the milk, maybe, and with a piece of bread inside, you lucky. Coffee, you never see, well, I was a kid anyway. But coffee, I never see coffee until it was come to Canada. They use chickadee and things like that. Mix up, grain burn, you know, to give it the color of the coffee. But anyway, we managed and the lunch was whatever, boiled soup, whatever, most bean soup and cabbage soup and cabbage and rice, I never forget that. Lots of cabbage and rice, because the rice was easy to get. Although the rice is a good one, the rice second grade. And then to the family, my mother, she had a sister, and her family, the sister family, it was quite healthy. They got a big farm and they got something. So I think my mother, she always gets something to all times, and you know, to the sisters, you know, nobody knows. They managed to get something for us. And we managed like that anyway. But the funny story is about the food is when the German was occupying our time, and they come in one time with the sergeants and capital, I don't know what they were, by the way, all the Germans, and they have machine guns, they got tanks, they got all other things. And that courtyard was very roomy and very cozy. So they come in all in there, and they put all the machines and jeeps and everything else they have. And they have two beautiful horses. I never forget that. And they tried to put me in the horse, and I was so scared because this horse, it was, you know, so high. You baby. And they put me high, I started crying because well, I never felt the horse. Beautiful horse. Anyway, so they stay for the night with all the stuff. And they come to the house, and you know, everybody have a glass of wine in the family. And before you know, you take the wine out, and the Germans start drinking, and they start dancing until the kitchen table. And you know, and my sister was the older one. That was quite, I think, was born 1925, so she was a nice age, and they danced on top of the table. Anyway, meantime, they was dancing the table, we have a glass of wine. They went to the cellar, we have over the cellar beside the house, and everybody got a pig in November. They killed a pig for the winter, and then what they do with the pig, they make sausages, they make everything being used with the pig, you know, whatever they do, prosciutto and musetti, salami, you know, everything. And somehow they, in the morning, figure out, and they clean up the cellar. All the salami, prosciutto, everything gone. Meantime, what happened? So they take off, and like I said, was the highway they're going, and there's a railroad, was the main road from Trieste to Milan. It was quite busy the road. So they take off. When they take off, about 5 kilometers, even that, is a big river. They call it Tagliamento. It's a big river, and the bridge is quite a sized bridge. It's about a kilometer long. And in the middle of the night, somebody bombed. They damaged the bridge. They couldn't go through. The Germans with the machines and everything. So what they did, they come back in time. So we are lucky, and we have this guy. He was speaking of the German, and to get the interpreter, we get the sergeant there, and all the big wheels, and say, we told him what happened. I said, what happened? You still all our food for the winter. I said, that's all we have. Everybody got, but you know that we survived. So what they did, they talk and they talk, they bring everything back. You know, lucky somebody bomb the bridge. But it's quite a story, you know. But to try to figure out and talk up Italian and German, and this interpreter they was not there. I mean, we managed to run it back. No. It's quite something.
All right, thank you, Rino. We're just going to have a short intermission, probably 5-10 minutes break, and see you all in 5 or 10. All right, so we're all set to start again. All right, so as the Americans and the Allied forces went northward, defeating the Germans slowly but surely, there was a lot of battles around where you lived, Emma. So yeah. Yeah, past my bedtime. And so there was a movie called Miracle at Santa Ana, which was in 2008, and that was took place during the Battle of the Garden.
Yes.
That's right. I was just testing it. So maybe you
Very
can,
good movie.
yeah, maybe you can tell us a little bit about not necessarily the movie, but in the book of it.
I can.
But the American soldiers in that area.
He has to.
Okay, well, actually, my uncle was liberated from a concentration camp by 3 black soldiers. And when they brought him home, first my dad and I had to go and see him, the uncle. Well, these 3 soldiers had brought him home, and I couldn't believe my eyes when I was looking at them. They were all dark and handsome, but when they turned their hands, I couldn't believe it. They were dark. The top of the hands were dark, underneath they were white, and I thought, what? Anyway, they were whatever. Rob knows it all. But that was one incident that I always remembered. You know, as far as the rest of the war there, well, we were definitely affected in many ways. Well, as far as food with us, we had everything on the farm, and my dad usually whatever he picked this year went for next year. So when the war happened, we had enough in storage to be able to carry on, because anything that was outside, you know, was taken. But another incident that I do remember is during the war. Any man that was around would be taken, and you'd never see them again. So my dad who was about 40 years old, and my uncle decided that they would hide themselves in a huge, about I would say 10 feet diameter chestnut tree that had pretty dried out. So what they did is they followed it and kept the the outer side to make a door and so on. They were living in there. They hollowed it out. They lived in there, and my sister and I would bring them a meal every night. And while he was in there, when they were in there, my dad got appendix. So he was somehow got him to the hospital in Custanova, which is not too far, but anyway. And while they were operating, the electrical station was destroyed. So no light, and they kept on. The doctors, you know, had to keep on candle light, and what do you call it? Not a stick, no. And that's right. Nothing, you know, to calm them down. So they just had to go on and do it. Many incidents like that you know you could go on and on. But I don't know what else you want.
Welcome to the Emma Rantucci show. Sure to entertain us all. These are great stories. All these stories are wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Talking about films, anybody saw the film last night, the Italian film?
Which one?
was a channel to reply. It was an Italian movie, only Italian. And why I mentioned that? Because the guy did it, he was from my town. And matter of fact, I went to school. He was a teacher during the war because what are you gonna do? You have to do something. And he was a teacher. And his name is Pietro Paolo Pasolini. He wrote about 12 big books about everything. And he was in Rome and he made these films. I don't know what year it was. They're poor films, but based in the religion. There was a thing, all the, the time when Jesus died and born and died and things like that. It was quite something. I don't know what they remember me. He was a school teacher, and I went to school with him. We have a little room in our cortile there in our area. They take about 10 guys across there because they closed the school because it was too dangerous. And they called this in to teach because, was the only one around, I guess. And they all fighting, I guess. And I only remember now in Casacta, San Giovanni is born. In Casacta, in the Comune, is where they all is quite they got about 5,000 soldiers there in this town in Casacta, and it's quite popular. And now they decide to do last time of thing in Italy. It was a few years back, and they decide to bring the body of this Paolo Pasolini from Rome to bring in Casacta, and they bury there. They got there, and they make a little museum about, and it's all about the books he wrote and the films he made and everything else. Because in Rome they killed him. I don't know what happened. It was so that strange guy, when you got too much brains, I think you're a little bit funny. And they killed him anyway. That's what happened. So it's quite a story. I really like that. But
So you had a very famous teacher. Now, Emma, you had a famous teacher as well, didn't
This
you?
one here?
Tell us about that.
You know what happened? What actually happened is, I lived with her and her mom way up in the hills during the war for maybe a month or so, but anyway, that's when I was riding the pigs. Anyway, she used to practice on me every night. She'd take out the books and I had to, of course, write and whatever. So after the war, I should have been in grade 1 during the war, that was there. And, but after the war, they gave an exam to all those that had missed grade 1. Well, through her teaching, I was the only one that passed. Thank you.
She wanted for breakfast. You wouldn't believe what she wanted.
Onions.
Onions. And I was looking after her, and she was as skinny as a ring. Can you eat onions for breakfast?
Now,
She was a stranger.
how about your fiance? Did he like you eating onions for breakfast? Clearly. Your fiance at that time, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah, really like onions for breakfast.
Oh, no, he really liked something else.
She's there.
talking about food. I forgot about one story. And after they stole everything burned back. and we have nothing, we are lucky to be. But somehow, when the German left, everybody left, they left a barrel, 5 gallons, a gin. But I think was much left in the barrel, because I didn't bother to take it. And my mother, she prayed to them. Thank you for the gem. Because we have nothing, and find this gem in the bottle, was quite something. You never forget that, my mother.
Oh.
All right, so just before we proceed any further, I would like to acknowledge that we have Lelia and her daughter Linda Ganzini here, who were here presenting. Do you mind standing up? Are part of the. And so for those of you who have not read the book, I highly recommend it. And you'll hear some of the similar stories to what you're hearing from our guests, with little twists, and it's a good read. I'm waiting for part 2.
I'm on it.
And the audio.
It's ready.
Oh, is it? Good. All right, so no, Gord, maybe we can go on to that single slide for. Sure. Because Clelia, your mom, who knew how to speak English,
Me,
your mother knew how to speak English. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
well, somewhat. Sorry. Yeah, simple English, somewhat.
and there were airplanes that came down. The Germans shot the Allied planes down,
yeah.
right? And so some of the pilots who survived needed some help. Maybe we could.
So brought them to our house because we spoke English. And it was the most terrifying thing because where we lived was on a hill. And the hill, and then there was the main road down here. They came through the back. So we could explain to them where they were and so forth. And the Germans were retreating down in the main road. I tell you, I was so frightened because if the Germans ever saw that or heard about that, they flew the shot. Anyway, they did. Mom did manage to. Was it the Partisans, I think? Took him over the border to the American side, something like that. Yeah.
But tell
And
them what she got from the commission.
Oh, yes, from the commissioner, she got,
That's from the commissioner of the particular army that sent a letter actually thanking my aunt, her mom.
I'll find it. Anyway, they gave her a certificate.
There it is.
A certificate.
so you can see a photo on the share.
Yeah, her efforts to save these soldiers. So she was pretty proud of that. And then a few weeks later, she was called to the commune, which is what would you call it in English? Commune.
The city hall.
City hall. And she was given 10 lire with $100. And well, I was something then. I got some bread and cheese. So
Yeah, so do you mind if I just read what that certificate says? This certificate is awarded to Tori Lucrezia as a token of gratitude for and appreciation of the help given to the sailors, soldiers, and airmen of the British Commonwealth of Nations, which enabled them to escape from or evade capture by the enemy. Signed H.R. Alexander, Field Marshal, Supreme Allied Commander of the Mediterranean Theater. So
they were not soldiers. Well, these were just there were no sailors. These were just soldiers.
For the airmen.
Yeah,
But also, that aided your ability to come to Canada, correct?
not me, not
But your father, yeah.
Yes,
So,
it helped because. Sorry. We didn't want to leave her alone in Italy because I was an only child. We didn't want to leave her alone there. So she was able to come with my husband and my son and myself. So that was really very good because it would have been too sad for her to remain there alone.
all right, so the German army started to retreat, and Emma, you have a little bit of a story of what you saw when the German army was retreating.
I don't remember the date, but was it May? I think it was May. We lived right on the main highway, as I said, going back to Germany or anywhere north. I happened to be sitting behind the barn and watching down at the road. And I just couldn't believe seeing all these German soldiers going home. It was so sad. Well, I was happy that the war was over, but to see these soldiers humped over a horse, trying to walk, whatever you can imagine, because none of them went back without injuries. So it was really sad.
All right, during the war, there were some bombings at Romi, and I guess your town was in an area that was a little safer than some.
Yes, because it was a town like where Frank come from, Celano, and that's a really high mountain. And the plane were coming down there, and we just the next to it. Though they were throwing the bombs, but the bombs they just skipped the town and it was on the land. So they missed them. Instead of Izzano, flat, because it was more open, and the town was completely destroyed on Izzano. But Celano, where we are, where we were, it was safe,
Yeah, so your town was just on the outskirts, sort of like, Rutland used to be, right?
Yeah.
And so you would live in, say, Rutland and see Kelowna just being
That's
wiped
right.
out
That's
by
right.
bombs.
Yeah.
So close.
Yeah. Well, see, where we come from, it's mountain all around. And then in the center, it's instead of a lake, it's a land. But that was a lake to start with. And Prince Toronio, he dried the lake and sent the water to go. So that's why we have all that land. It's really good land. And has a lot of value today because it's very, fertilized. Yeah, it does. So that's what happened. And so that's, but you stand on my town and you can look around and you see all this town all around. Yeah, it's really pretty. Yeah, it is pretty. Yeah, it's nice, but we were saved by that mountain because it's really steep. And they would just come down and they just couldn't get it. Because that's my dad, when we left the house, he was afraid because he said they see all the equipment, all the soldiers around the house, they were trying to get the house, so we had to leave. It was, yeah.
Thank you. So a final question we have before the audience asks questions or tells stories is, the war ended. Obviously, the situation in Italy was not great, all the damage. So maybe briefly you can tell us how you ended up in Canada, and maybe you might even point out some family members who have been kind enough to join us this evening. So who would like to go first? Okay.
Okay, well, I came to Canada because I married Frank, and he was here for 36 months. And he said, I'm gonna go back to Italy and I'm gonna find a wife. So he came back. And he found me, but how did he find me? He had his aunt here in Vancouver, which was married to my cousin, and I saw a picture of me. And he said, I'm gonna get that girl. And he did. And my parents, they were not happy. Because I was the only girl in the family and they don't want me to go. They say, "But you go there, you don't know the country, or you don't know, he could have a wife there." But I trust him. So we came to Vancouver, we got married, and we got married in April, and the end of May, we took a boat, we came through here, Halifax. From there, we got to Vancouver. In Vancouver, we stayed a few days, and then we came to Kelowna to see our relatives, which is Elmo and his family. And everybody said, Frank was working on the railroad. I said, "You want to take a Romi on the railroad in the bush? You crazy." So, and we had a cousin was married to a man who used to do terrazzo floor. And he had a job, they were just building Cabrit. And he said, "You can have a job with him." So Frank stayed here and he started working with Guini Terrazzo. And then he worked on Knox School. And from there, then he started Kelowna Wines. And it was only for a couple of months, but he ended up staying there forever. So, and it was, it was quite an experience. And I love Kelowna because it reminded me where I come from. That made me feel home, and I had all my family. And Em and Elmo, they were, well, I would say my best friends. Yeah, we still are. So we did a lot of things together, which was nice. We raised our kids together too, right? A lot of camping, a lot of good time. And that's what, when I came here, that were what I was missing from Italy, because I had the two brothers and I had a lot of friends, but I couldn't figure out why I had all these girlfriends, because they liked my brothers. And they organized dance and picnics, so we had a lot of fun. And my childhood was beautiful. And so that's what happened when I came here. Thanks to Elma and Emma, I remember they took me to Revelstoke. Yeah. And then we took Emma home, and and Emma said, "You have to come in." I said, No, it's late." "Oh no, you have to come in." Otherwise my dad would be really upset. Yeah, because they need the chaperone, so we were the chaperone. Yeah, it was quite interesting. Yeah. But then after that, we've been, close together for a long time.
And you have family here this evening.
Yes. That's my family.
That's how you stand up. Who might you be?
Nice girl.
That's my daughter Eleanor and my granddaughter Kadia. And my granddaughter Sarah.
Wonderful. Thank you for coming this evening.
Granddaughter, she's married to my grandson, and she's my granddaughter.
It's hard to sort these things out on the family tree.
Yeah.
All right, Rino, you up for sorting out your family tree here?
Oh, boy. Well, where I started. Well, I left in 1955. Because everybody left the town. I think half of the town is in Canada. The rest they are all over the world. Before I say something, I gotta tell you a joke. In 1969, Armstrong went to the moon. Is it true? Is it true? Some people don't believe that. Anyway, they went to the moon and they landed fine. And Armstrong hung out, you have to go to washroom. And so what are you gonna do? He can't go in the front of the camera. So he turned around the flower plate. He go in the back, and who was there? Italian, planted potatoes. They tell you they're all over the world. Anyway, I left in 1955, and I landed with the Fortuna. I landed in Halifax, and with 2 feet of snow. Well, that's okay. So we was about 1,000 immigrants there all over Italy, and they put us in the side, like they do like cattle, that time. And they ask where you going, with province, and okay, so some they go to Ontario, Manitoba, they went in Quebec, and then we asked British Columbia. Finally, somebody said, "Who's going to British Columbia?" And so I put my hand up, and there was about 3 of us going to British Columbia. So they put us in the special compartment in the train, and we take off, everybody. And every time was somebody stopping, they get out. And so the first stop was, where I remember, was in Montreal. In Montreal, if you're on the train, it's about 20 feet of snow. I said, what the heck is going on? And I couldn't go any back to, I didn't see nothing. But the train was frozen. Everything was frozen, windows, everything. And so, well, we went back, we stopped and went back. I wanted to eat, and we don't know what to buy. So we went to the store, to the train, always an hour, stop half an hour. And we went to the store and what we buy? Sardines, whatever we see, orange craft to drink, and this loaf of white bread. Okay, when you eat it, it's like molasses, you don't put sugar in the bread anymore. Anyway, we managed to keep going, and we reached what I read more is was the time, the capital of Alberta, Edmonton. Edmonton is a beautiful city where the train come in, it's right for 17, that's something, but still snow, And the train was frozen because they don't see nothing. Anyway, from Edmonton, we went to Jasper. Jasper is a connection there. You go to Prince Rupert or Vancouver. So now is the train, you have to ground the train and get the one to go to Prince Rupert. So it's about 5 hours wait for the train come along. The train was, every day was the train that time. So meantime, we got out the station and we went, well, everybody said, let's go for a beer. So what do you mean a beer? Where are you gonna go? It's 20 feet of snow in Casper. Well, they built tunnels, in places. You go, you go to the building part. No, we know about. Lucky, I was 6 people go to Prince Rupert. So I was never alone, really. It was quite Sunday, not big English, nothing. So we went to the big bar and we sat down. And before you know, one by, the other by, we got the table used to have. It's full of beer, glasses, little glasses, 5 cents a glass of beer, I never forgot that. I think of that beer now, so much. Anyway, we managed, and the train came here. We go back to the tunnel, and we went to the train, and we went to Prince Rupert. So I started seeing Canada back when I was in Terry's. Smithers all that. The weather changes in the west, and the weather changed, so the train, the windows start cleaning. So finally I started seeing nothing but trees. Nothing. That is he stopped, but he don't bother to get out. So we reached Prince Rupert, ran it like anyway, we managed. The story I went to Prince Rupert is because I have a sister, Irma, and she was married. She left a couple of years before me. But all my family, they are in Canada, just about. Just one she passed away. Ida, she didn't come to Canada, but all the rest, we come to Canada, like the older sister in Toronto, my brother in Toronto, and Gemma and her husband, they come to Prince Rupert. So I have a brother in Toronto. He couldn't call me because that time he got through the government, but then they don't want anymore. If you have a relation, you come, you don't come. So anyway, so I wrote to my brother. I say, sorry, I got not enough funds to sponsor you because you have to have so much money in the bank to get sponsors to buy because you take responsibility. So it's not like now, they pay the hotel, they pay it's like you know in holiday. That time it's got no anyway, I managed to say I got to Prince Rupert then. And my sister we managed to get the papers going and she had enough funds to do and then up in Prince Rupert otherwise. So I spent 5 nights in the train and 6 days to go to Prince Rupert from Halifax. That time, sleep in the bench, it's
And
quite
you-
something.
And you saw enough ice and trees
And it's
and rain to keep you happy for the rest of your life.
More snow.
Now, when you were in Prince Rupert, you met someone there, didn't you?
Well, well, I end up,
Where is your wife? Carol? Hello.
She's a wonderful woman from England. She born in Scotland. No, she born in Scotland. It's born in London, but her mother was Scottish, and she was Scottish than English anyway.
And you have your children here?
I have a children. I got Lisa, the older ones, and Carla, and then I got the boy, David. And I always remember the
Lamb chop.
the kid don't have no boys. I will keep going. I always said that. So she's lucky to have a boy.
And also your grandchildren are here.
And the grandchildren, we got Aiden and
Corbin's there too. And Celeste,
and so that is the
daughter-in-law.
daughter-in-law. And my son, David.
Big rest of my son.
Anyway, that's
Celeste didn't have to keep going.
And how about you, Emma? How did you end up in Canada?
Is this on or?
How do you think it's on?
Is it on? Yeah, okay. Well, let's see. My uncle, my dad's oldest brother, came to Kelowna in 1912. His another sister joined him in 1920. My dad always wanted to come out here. He felt that it would be a better life for us, for the daughters. And but he didn't want to leave his parents because they lived with us. So, but in the 1940s, my aunt asked Pat Capozzi, who had a son going to university in somewhere in Italy anyway, asked him to come and visit us, which he did. And he talked to my dad and said, look, if you want to come out there, I'll sponsor you. I have big vineyards, and my dad was really good at that type of work. I'll certainly sponsor and give you work. So my grandma died in 1949. Then my dad decided that he left enough money and so on with an aunt to look after him. And so in 1952, we came to Canada, and just like he mentioned, we landed in Halifax with the Saturnia. It was the end of January. So we traveled across Canada on the train, and I'll never forget that because I had never seen so much snow. And these little cottages along the railway, you could see a little bit of smoke coming out of a little chimney, I guess, but the snow covered the house pretty well. And the other thing that I remember is that there was a lot of white rabbits. Apparently in the winter, they turn white. I never heard of that. Yeah, but anyway, so we came to, Armstrong, seminar, yeah, I think Armstrong, anyway. And my cousin took us to his home and we stayed by their station here in Kelowna. From there, we moved to Summerland. I finished my schooling down there and then came back to Kelowna. I went to a business school and from there I followed through. Got married, went into real estate for many years. I just enjoyed it. And then we had 3 boys. Well, they're all here, I think. No, 2 are here. One's in Victoria. Robert and Chris is way in the back there. My husband's here, Elmo. I met him, of course, and we got married, of course, and then we had kids.
Or the chaperone wasn't very.
Oh, my God, yeah, I'll tell you.
Waiting for Clelia.
No, we didn't have the kids first. No, we had all the kids later. No, my dad was very, very strict. I couldn't go anywhere without a chaperone. So he chaperoned everybody else. Anyway, that's about it, I think. Yeah.
That covers it all, I think. And Clelia, I think we heard part of yours. So Clelia, I
Actually,
think
I know a lot of people that are here from Summerland whose parents, if they're Zonis, I knew really well. They came from our part of the area and I just met some of them. I've never met them before, but it's so nice to see you here and I hope to talk to you later.
Excellent. Hey, Clelia, how about your trip here? I think we heard part of it, but
Well, after the war, I finished my schooling in Italy. I got my teaching degree. And then we went to, Mother and I went to England because she had some business to do there. And I went to school there, from the University of Cambridge, which offered a course to students whose mother language was not English. And I did 2 years there. And then I was anxious to come back to Italy because I had a boyfriend. And we got married in 1949. And we lived in a location called Livorno for 6 or 7 years. And then the political situation was getting such that it wasn't very comfortable, especially for my husband. So we decided to come to Canada. And we came and we were a little surprised at the tiny little houses and the smoke, like you, from a covered cottage and a big car next to it. Anyway, we were very lucky. We both got work. My husband was a lab technician for the government. I was teaching, and we liked it here very much, and we were very happy. That's about it. But when things were going well, my husband passed away.
They have children. Your children.
I have 2 children, yes. Enio, who lives on the Gulf Island, and Angela, who lives here.
Perfect, thank you. All right, thanks for sharing your memories, great stories. And would like anyone in the audience who may have a question to put your hand up and feel free to ask a question for one of our guest speakers. Or if you happen to have a story to tell about your own family during that time period, you're welcome to tell that story. And Don will have a microphone. Our online viewers can use the chat function to send a message and question to Gordon Hotchkiss. Thanks.
I'm Lisa, I'm Dave's daughter, or my dad's. I'm not Dave's, my husband.
We all have Y'all like the family creation. Go for it. Go for it. It's, you're offering that family tree, program. Well, how you want to sort it out?
No, I was just wondering, you were telling stories about Nona and how she always made sure you had soup, right?
Yeah,
And growing up, you always made sure we had soup. There's always soup for lunch, always. We come home from school, there'd be a big pot of soup on the stove. So I guess that's where that comes from.
well, I used to be a chef
Yeah,
and cook, that's what I learned. And as my English is not that great, it's because I spend a lot of times in the camps, in construction camps, and there's more Europeans in English, you know, and English, we just speak the Slavic.
Yeah.
By the way, I passed by and everything else works out good. Only my English I never pick it up properly. And I got trouble with English all the time. And but I had to be a chef. I used to run 300 men, making the menus, cooking the food. Not alone, I have company. We have 2 cooks with me and waiters and everything else. And I think it's a camp life, but for me it was very good and I like it. And the soup, they always, people like the soup, so I have to be soup make it.
and we always, when we sat at the table and ate our soup, we always spoke English.
That's true. Now I love my sister not long ago,
I know.
and I don't speak dialect anymore. I just speak English, and I can speak English. I can speak dialect. The Italian is not too bad.
That's okay,
So,
that's okay, Dad.
but,
We still love you.
Anyway, everybody.
Anyone?
No.
Mom. What? When you left Italy, you talked about the boat coming across the ocean. You guys were down low in the boat. And you said Grandpa did something, no, did something to try and get more air in the, with the porthole.
You opened it.
Yeah, but what happened?
I can't remember.
You said they flooded the whole place up. You weren't supposed to open it and you guys were afraid you were gonna get tossed off the boat.
That's been a long time ago. That was 1952.
Yeah, Claudia, I wanna ask you a question. You said you had a boyfriend up in Massa.
Yeah.
How many boyfriends did you really have?
I'm very faithful.
But you also were around during the Battle of 1940 in England.
You know, I can't remember.
Just one thing that I'd like to add to that trip on the boat. My dad was so afraid that we would go hungry. And of course, my mother and I stayed in that hollow in the boat because we were so seasick. We couldn't even move out of bed. My mom used to get all the sheets together and put them to her stomach and say, oh my God, it's finally filling my hole. But my dad, of course, we couldn't go to eat, but my sister and dad did, but we didn't. But my dad had a suitcase full of sausage. Because he was a butcher, he made them himself. Anyway, you know, that smell of garlic stayed with me for so long, I couldn't even use it.
Well, I wanted to say something about sausages. I was in England then. I can't remember the year, but I remember. Do you remember Filoni?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, Filoni was a man who lived in our village, and he was going to Scotland to visit his sister. This was after the war, and so they phoned me in London if I could accompany him from Victoria Station to Glasgow. So I said, yeah, I didn't like the old man, but anyway, he had a suitcase, those cardboard suitcases full of sausages and cheese. It was so heavy. And we went to save money, instead of taking a taxi, we went in, with the underground. Well, when we came to the, what do you call it, the movies there?
Escalator.
At the
Escalator.
escalator, he said, Porco carne, cosa c'è qui? And it means, my God, what are these? And he let go of his suitcase, it broke a lot. It all goes up to the cheese, it all comes on like 17. I just ignored him. And these proper English with a bowler hats and the umbrella just look. Anyway, we collected the sausages, tried to string around with the case and took the sausages to him.
All right, then, do we have any questions from chat?
We don't have any questions. Stella Jorgensen just wanted to make sure that somebody gave Carol a hug because she really wanted to meet you. Stella Jorgensen,
To give.
Carol,
Which Carol?
Rino's wife.
Oh, okay.
That's it. That's the only thing in the chat window.
Okay. Any other questions from our audience? Oh, we just got something on chat.
Easy.
This is to any one of our guests. Do you remember any talk in your house about partisans, hidden radios, or spies?
Well,
Did anyone in your home, in your house, ever mention partisans or spies or radios that were hidden away? Rino?
yeah, well, I remember, well, I don't really, this is the second one. Said what the old people were they talking about. They used to bury the Germans, straight down and leave just the head. And in different places, and maybe a dozen of them. And then they used to play with them like football, the Germans used to play. But anyway, that's the story I hear about. I never see such a thing, but I think it was true because stories like that, the Parmigians and the Germans did, even some Americans, they did very bad things. I know the Americans they win the war. I'm not against America or anything, but when they come to my time, they did a lot of bad things. They did not very good. But they win the war and everything's okay. They help Italy very good. They pay for everything. For them, we don't have moving here now. But because with the government we got in Italy, you guys know, it's upside down all the time between the communists and fascists and the democratic, nothing but trouble. You think you got trouble again? You don't know what in Italy. Anyway, I think it started from the beginning, from after Mussolini died. If you know the story of Mussolini. What happened, he trained us, and they found Mussolini dead in the side of the road somewhere. They never know who did kill him. And matter of fact, so they pick up the body and they bring it to Milan, and they ended in Milan for a month. Ended by the lakes, upside down, in some square in Italy. They stayed there for a month. And everybody was, he tried that. Mussolini did a lot of good things in Italy before the war. He put Italy in the map. He put, like I said, he put highways, he put railroad, he put the trains in time. to the train that was running out late. He did a lot of good things, Mussolini, but only trouble he turned with the Germans. And that's the worst thing that can happen to Italy. Because Italy, they didn't want to fight, they didn't have to fight though. And so that's what happened really, you know.
Thank you.
The way this is in the books, you know, it's not, that's the truth.
And Emma, you had, we're going to mention something.
Well, I recall that, I got this one.
Yeah.
Hello, yeah, anyway, during the war, that we had a lot of partisans around our area there that belonged to it. So, and of course, with the Germans, they didn't get along. One night we heard the German soldiers, which were in the bedroom next to us, shouting, "Partisan, partisan, partisan," and they're running to the window. Anyway, they had a shootout, and that happened quite often, but yeah, we had lots of them there. And it was a problem because they didn't just go after the Germans a lot of times through jealousy of girls or whatever. They had a shootout anyway, you know, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Emma, Clelia, Romi, and Rino, thank you very much for sharing your extraordinary childhood memories. And we have a gift. As
I just wanted to remind people, we do have this January again, we're going to be running our family tree, how to do your Italian family tree workshops, 8 sessions. But be warned, your family tree may get very complicated, as these 3 ladies here can attest to. Okay. I started my family tree just with my ancestors, but it gradually moved sideways. And the advantage, of course, of going sideways is you can find out more about some of the common relatives, you know, up top, because you get good stories. Well, the story is that Emma's cousin is Caesar Turi, who's also my dad's cousin. So you're on my tree now too. Which then puts Clelia on the tree because she's a cousin with Emma as well. Then you've probably heard some stories tonight about why they came to Canada, who they met here. And some of the family, they weren't mentioned by name, but Chanconi is a big name that connects people together. And that connects me to Romi here as well. Also, Romi comes from has connection to the Chacha family, which were the witnesses for my grandparents' wedding here in Kelowna, because they come from the same town. Okay, so the tree gets wider and wider. I haven't found a connection, but there's a connection kind of came tonight with a story he told. My mom was born in Kelowna when she was about 10 or 12. Her job was to go to the post office and send these packages back to Italy. And I said, well, what was in the packages? She said, well, most of the time it's coffee. But she had no idea why. Coffee was in there. Well, tonight I find out one of the reasons maybe coffee was impossible to get in most of
I never
Italy.
see coffee in my house.
Good as her.
Well, we sent some back to the relatives in Italy. So in return for some of those things, stories of sharing tonight, we have a small thank you for everyone here tonight. Thank you for sharing your stories. These are recycled pumpkins.
Oh,
There you go.
thank you. Something made.
Not pricey made.
Wow.
And my freezer is too full, so I have to
Oh.
share them here.
I don't have a picture.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thanks very much.
And thank you to our speakers. So I hope that this encourages our viewers to maybe gently ask their parents or grandparents about what life was like during the war. And of course, if you don't ask soon, the time to do so may pass. So thank you to our live audience here tonight for coming out, to a good turnout, and also online viewers from across the country. In a minute, please join us for coffee and tea and some goodies at the back. And I'm going to have Gord mention our next LNFI presentation. Gord, do you mind talking about it?
Sure.
There's also a slide on it too.
I don't,
Okay.
I can't do double duty that.
Actually, it was great. Romi mentioned when Frank came here that one of his first jobs was with Victor Guinea, doing terrazzo. So that actually is our subject in January. We're going to be talking about terrazzo. Victor's son Jerry is actually going to be joining us via Zoom from Florida. We couldn't convince him to come back in the winter. Something about 20 feet of snow. But we also have a professor from Northern Italy at a university who's done his paper, Abe Grossuti. He did a fairly extensive paper on terrazzo craftsmen coming out of Northern Italy. So he's also going to be joining us via Zoom. And actually, Mary, who I think is related to you, her family had a terrazzo business in Winnipeg. So we're going to try to get some footage that her grandfather did of corrupted terrazzo. So that's January. If this sounds fascinating to you, and I'm sure it does, join us for that. And just really quickly, if you've enjoyed this evening and you've been kind of following the LNFI stuff that we've been doing and you would like to contribute a little or a lot, make sure you find Dawn or myself or David. Our committee does obviously these presentations. Dawn mentioned the family tree workshops. We do that. We did a field trip to Kaitani House earlier. The stories that were shared tonight are so precious. And that's what the committee is all about, is gathering these stories and making sure that we save them so we can pass them on to future generations. And that's really what the heart of our committee is. So if that is something that's appealing to you, come and talk to us. We've got a lot planned. Actually, next year is 140 years of continuous Italian presence in Kelowna. That was the year 1883 was the year that Giovanni Casorso first came. So that's going to be a big year for us. So we've got a lot planned.